In an earlier blog post, I advised the Democrats to overcome the impasse on enacting President Biden's Build Back Better agenda, which centered on essentially Biden personally negotiating with the two holdouts in the Senate caucus, Manchin and Sinema, and basically giving them whatever they want in exchange for, say, enacting 2/3 of the Build Back Better agenda, in which case Biden and the Democrats could declare victory. For example, holding the coal industry entirely harmless under the Build Back Better agenda. Nothing that would hurt the coal industry. There's still a million other things you could do to advance the battle against climate change that would still hold the coal industry harmless, or throwing billions and billions and billions of dollars at West Virginia and Arizona to get the votes of Manchin and Sinema. And in that blog post, I said that if Manchin and Sinema were to turn down such a sweet deal, then that would be proof positive that they're not negotiating in good faith and that they intend to destroy President Biden's agenda and really his entire presidency. Well, the worst has come to pass. Clearly, I'm doing this blog posting a few months after the other one that I just posted to the blog. And 3 months later, it's obvious that they were never negotiating in good faith. They had no intention of ever voting for a Build Back Better agenda in any way, shape, or form, even though it was obvious that the White House was intensively negotiating with them and probably trying to give them everything they wanted. Both Manchin and Sinema claim that the reason they oppose Build Back Better is because they want to preserve the Senate filibuster, which they say is some sort of, invaluable mechanism to keep our democracy thriving by ensuring that the minority party doesn't get its voice entirely drowned out in the Senate. Of course, that's ridiculous. As we all know, the Senate is already, an anti-democratic check and balance on the House of Representatives and on the other branches of government. The minority party, of course, even without the filibuster, can register its opinion, and you don't have to pass things with Republican votes. That's not how it's supposed to work. So obviously, when they say that, they're not in good faith. But here's an idea that we could basically smoke out Manchin and Sinema for the cynics that they really are. Cynics, I should say, that they really are. And here's how to do it. President Biden and Schumer should just Schumer, with Biden's blessing, public blessing, should say, okay, fine, Joe Manchin, fine, Kristen Sinema. We agree the filibuster is really indispensable. So we propose that we actually restore it in its original pristine form, the form that actually required anyone who wanted to do a filibuster to actually physically be on the floor of the Senate and talk and talk and talk endlessly. And if they just stop talking for even 5 seconds, the chair can bring down the gavel and put an end to the filibuster, unless they pass the baton to somebody else who's willing to talk and talk and talk for many hours. So, the way the filibuster used to be, for example, in the famous movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, it was supposed to be physically exhausting. Nowadays, the filibuster doesn't require that. It only requires that somebody just make a motion, and then that just puts an end to moving forward with the proposal without a real, actual, physical filibuster. So if Schumer were to propose that to Manchin and Sinema, it would basically be calling their bluff. If they really love this filibuster so much, let's go back to the filibuster in its original form, which, by the way, was very difficult to implement because it was physically exhausting, and which eventually you could break a filibuster because it was so physically exhausting. It would just take a while, just the way Strom Thurmond's historic and famous filibuster against the 1964 Civil Rights Act was eventually broken because physically Thurmond and the Dixiecrats could not sustain it. So let's go back to that version of the filibuster. When Schumer proposes that, I think there's a 99% chance that Manchin or Sinema would then say, oh, no, we didn't mean that. We meant the filibuster in its current form, that is to say, an easy filibuster where nobody has to physically exhaust themselves on the Senate floor. At which point, then, we would smoke out Manchin and Sinema for what they are, which is essentially Republican agents trying to undermine Biden and the Democrats. And that would be very useful just for the historical record to show that these guys were never negotiating in good faith. However, there is a 1% chance that they would accept this offer, in which case then you could just have a old-fashioned filibuster against Build Back Better agenda, and eventually the Republicans would run out of gas, and then you could pass it. It would just take a long time, probably a month, but that's fine. A month, that's okay, if you're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar agenda. So that's what I think Schumer ought to do at this point. Give Manchin what he wants, the filibuster in its classic form. And then we can say to Manchin, careful what you wish for, Joe. I predict he would turn down such an offer, at which point it would be absolutely crystal clear to everyone that this guy is a complete cynic. He's basically, he is a Republican, in effect, the worst kind of Republican, that is, say, a Republican agent in our ranks.